And welcome to another edition of the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zotke. Joining us once again, it's Tony DiZinno, as we're both fresh from the Sonsio Grand Prix at Road America. And it was quite a lovely weekend, wasn't it, up there, Tony?
It really was, Steve, and it's good to see you after our paths did not cross as intended this weekend on site. But nonetheless, I mean, it's Road America. It's a happy place. It's June. It's good weather, good racing, all the above. Good food, which I may or may not still be recovering from at this point. But but yeah,
I can understand that. Yeah, it was a wild weekend, a lot of stuff to do, and as we like to do in the Midwest, we love putting 6 months of activity in about 3 months. So, and we're certainly in go mode right now for that.
oh my goodness, yeah. As I always seem to do when you and I talk, Dave Coleman had a Q&A with Mike Kircher, the track president, in advance of the season, and there's a lot of factors, but they're in a stretch now where I think 4 of 5 weekends they've got a major event. They've got bikes, they've got IndyCar, they've got June sprints coming up, and then the Cup weekend, the NASCAR weekend on July 4th. So no shortage of activity or things for them to be prepping, covering, managing, rotating through different casts of characters, different fan bases, different competitors. I mean, it's flat out in a good way, of course.
And plus, a lot of people may not know this, but I mean, Road America is a track that has over 450 events during the year, and that includes a lot of corporate events during the week, ride-alongs, schools, and whatnot. And there's all, I mean, if you'll go past Road America if you're going to, if you're going through town for whatever reason on a Wednesday, you'll look up, you'll see cars on the track or something's always going on, isn't it?
No, that's a really good point. I mean, whether there's other teams testing or there's like you said, track days, school events. I know there's I've been up there a couple times during the week, not recently, but in past years. I'm familiar with that. It's almost like it's good that the local businesses and the local community get the stuff as well as the race weekends, because I think that was actually one of the bigger takeaways I had. Is just I'm always up there, but it just feels like the whole downtown and the whole area has just grown so much. Um, Great atmosphere, great camaraderie. I mean, you kicked off the weekend on Thursday with the kickoff party at Seepkins. So
Yeah, nice job with Lauren Cooper and that group with that kickoff party, which I think is in its fourth or fifth year, I think,
at least, yeah, it's been
and
it's been several years.
for the Racing for Kids Foundation, and a very very nice event. Met some people up there that weekend, and well attended event. And yeah, Road America, or I should say downtown Elkhart Lake, always has something going on. And NASCAR week, I've been uh, one of the duties I have to do that weekend. I'm trying to bring some vintage stock cars to bring into town on Friday night, Friday evening at Seepkins for that. That's going to be our second year in a row. Trying to bring some of the fans from the track down into downtown at Seepkins on Friday night. So if you're in the area, NASCAR weekend, come on down. It'll be a neat opportunity to see some vintage stock cars at Seepkins and picturesque downtown Elkhart Lake.
Absolutely.
Josef Newgarden makes up for a heartbreaking loss last year at Road America. Finds redemption, and I guess you could say he dominated in winning the at Road America this year. It's his third win of the year, and he also cashes in on this. The was it People Ready Force?
Hmm.
Good
Force
challenge.
for good.
Yeah, $1 million prize. So tip of the hat to Joseph and Team Penske.
Yeah, a lot of good with that. In terms of storyline of, purses aren't usually something that's talked about in IndyCar. Hasn't been for a while, so that was an extra good buzz. Joseph Newgarden, it's funny, he's the only driver with multiple wins this year, and of course he's got three. And the whole point of why he won this People Ready Force for Good is because he's won on ovals, he's won on a street course, he's won on a road course, and he's done it in 8 races. It was so funny. He made a point where it's like, "Oh, finally, I got it done." I was forgetting about it. I was like, "Dude, you're in 8 races, and you're the only person that's won more than once." Power gave him grief during his TV interview. It was like, "Oh yeah, we get a different winner every week, except Joseph, who's got three." So that was not said with any sense of salt or shade at all after his race. But yeah, I mean, when Joseph's on, he's good. He's always been so good at this track. I mean, in different body kits, he made his comeback here after his shoulder injury, which was kind of the ride that put him in Penske position. And he could have won for Penske, and then Dixon beat him, and then he dominated 118, and then he should have won last year at Gearbox. And Now this time he got the jump on the pit stop, but even with that, I mean, he banked Rossi by, gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 seconds in that next stint, and that was kind of the difference in the race. But really good to see those two back up there battling for the lead.
Certainly is.
I feel like that is a thing that in this wave of the new guys, the Patos, Palos, VKs, Colton Hertas, this year's rookie class. We had Joseph and Rossi a couple of years ago, and we've not had that since that 2019 point. So it was really good to see those two kind of back at the front on the same weekend.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Newgarden led 26 of the 55 laps. Rossi led 16, and he's been quietly bringing himself back into the front, and got his first pole position in 3 years. Looked very good, but that one pit stop, he got pinned in there for a little bit, and just didn't seem he was able to make that time up. And then he got schnookered a bit on the restart by Ericsson. Ericsson passed him late, but he was able to salvage a podium. I thought his comments were interesting after. I thought he'd be kind of pissed off and like, yeah, I really wanted to win because I was like, I was a little frustrated. I'm a Rossi fan. I'm like, third place, but he said, yeah, when you start from the pole, you kind of expect you're going to win. But he seemed, I think he's feeling good because overall the team from where it was earlier prior to Indianapolis to where they are now, he is definitely seen improvement. So I think he feels better for the rest of the year.
Oh, no question, and I agree completely with that sentiment. I thought he was gonna be grumpy, angry, because he's such an enigma with how his attitude and personality is, because you never know if you're gonna get happy, grumpy, sassy, you know, funny. He's super candid this year. He's been so wide open. I actually got a brief chance to catch up with him on Friday in a one-on-one setting, which was nice because don't usually get that. And he's in a really good headspace right now. I think the fact that his contract situation is now public, it's not. I don't have to dance around this thing anymore. He has actually come. This is a crazy stat. He was 27th in points after Texas, 80 some odd points out. He's I think sixth or seventh now. I'd have to
Biggest
double check
jump.
which,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's within 70-ish points now. I mean, he wants a championship. I think he knows that if you get both a championship and a 500, you're more well-rounded. And to that point, he's got a 500, but he doesn't have a championship. Joseph has two championships. He doesn't have a 500. Um, if he can get one win, I think the floodgates will open. It's just getting that last little bit, and whether he's been through, I think, a different pit crew every race except for the last three. It's really been since the 500 that they've got the same crew now in place. Um, that will help him. But even then, I mean, it shows you how difficult it is if one bad stop, or in his case, it was a slow stop plus McLaughlin came in at the same time. I watched it back, so he had to hold a split second, which was
Yep.
just enough. And it's like you don't even think it's gamesmanship, but it's just those tiny fractions where a guy comes in right before you. It could be a Ganassi guy, it could be another, whoever else, and that those finite margins can make a big difference.
And I think for Rossi, we've seen the ascendancy of Colton Herta and how dominant he's been at times. Of course, he's had his gaps and whatnot, but I think for the excitement level, the fans, the kind of everything's Colton Herta. So yeah, or I mean Rossi was kind of like the man for a while there, and now this younger teammate Herta comes along. Now it's not exactly the same situation, but you got a situation where Alex Palou wins a championship. It looks good, fantastic. And then now you got Marcus Ericsson wins Indy, and then you got a situation that happened in turn five where, well, personally, I think 9 out of 10 drivers in that position would have made that move, jumping to the inside of Palou at turn five. After the race, Mark Erickson said nothing wrong with that move, and I agree. I think, but it's a little bit of frustration. I think you're seeing frustration from Palou, who's now seeing some adversity in it for the first time in a while.
Boy, we did. I know we didn't see each other during the weekend, but this is incredible how much the wavelengths and kind of debrief is. Because I had the same thought on the drive back. Our mutual friend Steve Whittick, I was
Hmm.
working alongside him this weekend at TSO, and we were saying Polo was the guy did it to Dixon last year, and now Erickson, who's not known as a great qualifier but has really good racecraft. Now he's qualifying better, so it's like you're making the move on me on lap 3 for third, net podium spot. I mean, Ericsson is like, I know everyone's like, oh, he's stealthy, he's sneaky, he's quiet under the radar. Stop that point. He's not under the radar anymore. He's your bloody Indy 500 champion. He's top five contention almost every race. If he qualifies better, he's a legitimate championship contender, no question. And Pelot, I didn't know he had that side in him of frustration because he's so happy-go-lucky all the time. He usually puts a positive spin on everything. I was like, dude, this is not even the it wasn't even the worst contact between drivers during the race, and you're
Right.
you're all riled up over this. So have some coffee or something, dude.
And then we have the other person who was not well in the last few weeks is Devlin DeFrancesco. You had the situation with Will Power, and now the should he be park talk is starting to bubble up to the surface. What says you, Tony DiZinno?
I don't think he should be parked. I think that would set a bad precedent. I think there's as much argument. You could also make an argument hypothetically that Will's contact after the race, trying to drive him off the road into turn one, could also merit some kind of penalty. I'll be very interested to see what IndyCar does with that, if anything, or if it becomes a double secret probation Animal House type thing. As far as Devlin's deal, I mean, he cleaned up a lot in the last few races. He's been quiet. He's been under the radar. This was old Devlin from the first two races at St. Pete and Texas back, and that's not good. He is at his best when he is just banking laps, staying out of the way, and just getting mileage, getting experience. I mean, a solid, call it 13th or 14th place finish in this field. That's not a bad result.
Mhm.
I talked to Kyle Kirkwood on Friday, and he made a really good point. He said that finishing 15th in IndyCar is as hard as winning a lights race right now. And in Devlin's case, with the three Andretti teammates all finishing in the top five, that hasn't happened in 2 years. A steady 14th or 15th, he had the pace for it. He didn't need to be that aggressive that early. I get that he wants to impress and make a name for himself. That's not the right way to do it. I hope he kind of calms down a little bit the rest of the season. He's got a little bit of a time break now to kind of reflect and see where he's at. And he's got Rob Edwards as a strategist. That's usually a good coach. I mean, they're pretty vocal on the radio to, kind of communicate with him.
Well, as it is, as the old adage in racing is it's a lot easier to slow someone down than it is to speed them up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Devlin has the potential, no question. I still think he jumped to IndyCar a year early, and I think you're kind of seeing the results of that right now. Although, to be fair, the other two Indy Lights grads from last year, Dave Malukas and Kyle Kirkwood, they've had more flashes consistently, but they've not been outright pace setters. I mean, the European guys have actually been probably a little bit better on the whole this year. It's been a fascinating dynamic to see which of the two kind of styles has done better among the rookies.
That's an interesting point because I'm looking at Christian Lundgaard and Callum Ilott, who finished 10th and 11th. Both are rookies, and I think if I'm a team owner or team manager, I'm very happy with that. But once again, I think that's a case where Lundgaard and Ilott, you take the total races of their career over the last 5 years. I think it's significantly more than what Kirkwood has been able to do, or Devlin, or some of those other guys, just because the Indy Light schedule isn't that long, and these guys have been running a lot for the last couple of years. Maybe not last year, in the last year or so, but I think Lundgaard has a lot of races, as is Ilott, and it's really starting to show. I was kind of surprised by that. You're kind of frustrated by Graham Rahal finishing eighth, but here, okay, here's the 30 car in 10th. So I think for RLL Racing, I'm kind of happy with that. Rahal, though, it'll be interesting to see how this second half of the season is he able to rebound.
Yeah, to cover off the rookies first, I think one guard. You don't realize again how far the points for him are ahead. He's got a 17-point lead on Malukas for rookie of the year, but the other three are all almost 50 plus back. So that's a pretty healthy margin at this point. I would say to really to both drivers. I think one guard and Ilott are overachieving compared to where their
Mhm.
equipment and situations are. I mean, in Ilott, I mean, I thought he might have had another hand or wrist injury with his practice or qualifying incident, and he drove through it. He started, finished 11th on a physical track. That's I know there's time to rest it, but still very high speeds. With no teammate, with no second set of data, that's impressive. Whereas in Lundgaard's case, he's got data, but the data is not necessarily helping because none of them are performing well. They're all qualifying in the teens or 20s, and you're hoping to bank a top 15 out of it. So to get two top 10s in a series of 12th, 13th place finishes, those are solid results. I mean, when you really go down the list of drivers within the field that, if you're beating a Castro Neves regularly, if you're beating, a Penske car here or there, a Ganassi car here or there, those are stout. Rahals as a team is a bit, I don't want to use the word lost, but they're not at the caliber that they've very steadily and consistently shown. I think there's some external and internal factors they're working through. And I think the other question with Graham, frankly, is, he's a driver, but he's a businessman at this point. He is the primary team principal focus, has always had kind of a very sharp, astute business mind, and he still races well. He's always raced well. He's just never qualified well. And that qualifying gap is harder to overcome now than it was even 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you mentioned that, because I had a conversation with Alonso Jr. And when he was running, with Penske and even prior, he never qualified either. And I said, well, that's because they said you had to chase somebody. He goes, that wasn't always necessarily true. He said, I qualified, but I was always someone I was always focused on my race setup more. I'm not saying that's the case with Graham Rahal, but it is interesting how you're talking about drivers that are 20 years apart in their careers, and it's the same thing that comes up. Some drivers are better at qualifying, some others are not. I mean, look at Will Power. There's a guy who is able to put in one. If you need a fast lap, he's the guy that do it. And we've seen that Formula One too over the years. Somebody needs to put in that one lap. I mean, look at Lewis Hamilton, how many times he's done that in Europe. But yeah, there's Rahal, and I was thinking that way during the race where he was kind of struggling a little bit. I'm thinking, how long is he going to be doing this? Family Guy, got the
Mhm.
kids, and Bobby, and you and I have seen Bobby at the track. Bobby is pretty chilled out now.
Bobby's enjoying life
He
right now.
is
He's got the name, he's got the quotes, but he's there to have a good time at this point. He is
as
not nearly as hands on. And the other factor I think that with Ray Hall to consider is they have their BMW prototype
mhm,
program coming online next year. So there's a lot of technical planning happening concurrently. There's a new shop that's huge that they've just moved into or they're about to move into. I don't know where they're at in kind of the timeline on that. There's a lot happening business wise there. Bob's got a big picture view, but Graham is now in that phase. And, for as young as he is, he's still only 33. I mean, but he's been driving since 2007, since a lot of these guys were single digits, 6, 7, eight
mhm,
years old. He's in that, you look at kind of generations, he's kind of in that second generation from the top, despite only being 33. I honestly don't know if he's going to continue much past the current length of this car on a full-time basis, which, depending on
yeah,
where they're at with the hybrid, do you want to develop that or do you want to kind of scale back to an Indy only entry? So I know he has a contract through 24 if he wants to, and obviously it's his team. He's going to drive as long as he wants to, but I don't know if he's going to have the bandwidth to do that, quite frankly.
that's a good point. And I hope people realize how, I want to say lucky, but how bad I guess it could have been that Simon Pagenaud save at the kink was. I mean,
There
people
were,
they look
oh
at that
my
and go, "Whoa, that's
goodness.
kind of wild," but that was incredible.
Holy cow! There were we got away with a few this weekend. Not gonna
Yeah.
lie.
Mhm.
Simons was the most visible. Obviously, he went all the way off in the kink, saved it, corralled it. Colton Herta, you mentioned earlier with exciting hands. My God, the thing was oversteering 2 or 3 different times. Watching his hands and just how calm he is, like dude, you're 21. Like you've got these. It's crazy. And then I'm sure we'll get to in a minute the lights crash that happened pre-race that moved that whole thing up. That was into the fencing at turn 5. um, all three could have been very bad and or not, and that's a testament to the track safety and the MR safety team and the durability of these cars that there weren't, and the drivers obviously who saved it in the 2 cases that saved it.
Right, right, and the other thing, I don't know if it got enough print, but that was a heck of a battle right at the end of the race, that final restart between Rossi, Grosjean, and Herta.
It
And
really was, and credit to all of them. I Grosjean, given his ability to not necessarily bring the car back in one piece, did a very good job to not make any mistakes in that setting. Really good racecraft from him. He had a push to pass advantage. He was able to get Colton. He didn't get Rossi, but it didn't end in tears for any of them. Big morale result for that team. Big boost for Andretti Autosport. Really, they have a lot to be happy of after that. And they head to Mid Ohio after this, where they're traditionally very strong. Usually a winning contender with 2 to 3 cars there.
yeah, and well, the Indy Lights crash with Christian Bogle coming into turn 5. We've seen crashes like that before. Yeah, I think of two things. People have to remember those catch fences are for the fans.
Mhm.
They're there to protect the fans, not necessarily the drivers. It did its job. Credit to Indy Lights, the integrity of the sub stayed intact. He was able to walk away. We've seen that, especially in the old IRL days, early on in the early 2000s, where that wasn't always necessarily the case. And everything worked as it should. And they had to put up a new fence, and that's part of the deal. Every track, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, or whatnot, IMSA, they all have fencing, spare fencing for that very situation. They've all been trained on it. In fact, at the Milwaukee Mile, we actually had a trailer, a fence guy at the track in case it need be if a fence had to be repaired. So yeah, tip of the hat to everybody involved in that. It worked out and everything worked the way it should have.
Super impressive. I mean, it was something where you see the guy, like you saw the end of the result first, and it's a good thing you saw the end of the result first. Then you watch the replay and see how he got there. I was like, whoa, that wasn't in the
Exactly.
script. That wasn't in the
Exactly.
script. I mean, that it'll be interesting. With Road America is supposed to go undergo a repave at the end of this year, which will be a very big talking point, long overdue, big story. But there's that curb. There's on driver's right entry into turn five, and where Christian hit it, he hit it dead center with the underside of the chassis, and that basically propelled him on two wheels, kind of did a wheelie into the catch fencing. And again, good thing that it didn't go higher
Hmm.
on launch, and good thing that the way the nose clipped it, it essentially kind of used like a trying to think like a shower curtain to kind of pull
Right.
the fence, like pull the fencing that way. So it broke into the track. It did not break outside into the fan area, which obviously turn five at Road America is a huge fan area. I mean, there were people out, it's an early start time, right? I mean, there's people there at 8:30, 9 o'clock, even though the IndyCar race doesn't start till almost noon. So again, credits all involved for the safety in that. And yeah, just you hate close calls, but we've gotten away with a few of them so far this year.
Yeah, a note on that. I got some inside information on that repave at Road America this year. That okay, it was last paved in 1995. They're going to go all the way down to gravel, and it's going to be completely repaved. But most of the people that were involved in that have retired. When they heard Road America was going to be repaved, they actually contacted the track and said, "Hey, we're retired, but we're willing to come out of retirement. They want to be a part of it." And a lot of the same players that did it back in '95 said, "We want to be a part of it. We really appreciate it. You know how long it lasted. They got especially for track in Wisconsin." And a lot of those same players are going to be involved in it this time. So I thought that was kind of
That's
cool.
dang, that's some remarkable intel right there. I mean, and you make a good point. For a weathered surface, you hear more about tracks that are 2005, 2006 time frame that have or later that have had issues, and there haven't been here. I mean, in general, I mean, and really shout out to the whole Road America crew, from their grounds crew, their track improvement crew, the gift shop, John Everett Communications. I mean, the amount of investment they continue to pour into that facility, it 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 just grows the status more every year. It really does. In particular to some other tracks that have fallen a little bit further behind. There's other Midwest related tracks that I shall not name, but you can read between the lines on that. That have, I mean, it's really incredible how much investment continues to pay off with every passing year.
One more thing, during the there's a lot of downtime and there's a lot of PA announcements and entertainment that they try and do during the race weekend. And they did. I don't know. I'm assuming it was the Firestone 5 minutes with Mario. I don't know if you heard this, but they asked him. They asked him a question: What two tracks do you want to see back in the schedule? And he mentioned Phoenix and Milwaukee, and I thought that was pretty interesting that they would put that on the PA at an IndyCar track during an active IndyCar weekend, saying we need the Milwaukee Mile back on the schedule. Did you hear
I
that by chance?
I did not hear that. My two former home tracks, I guess, literally the
Yeah.
two cities I've spent 90% of my life in. Um, I think, well, obviously there was the Milwaukee Mile chatter earlier this year around Texas. I think that quieted. The tell for me is going to be Iowa. How big does Iowa look? What is the crowd number? Does the concert vibe help that? I know obviously the last time we tried the mile, there was the kind of festival-ish Andretti sports marketing vibe, which in hindsight maybe it was ahead of its time. I think maybe the appetite, the way racing in America is at right now, is more hungry for that now than it was 7, 8 years ago. Certainly with the ARCA race and what that group has done, they put it back on the map, and what you guys have done as well, and Harry Miller's side. But um, yeah, I'd love to see it. Obviously, I think a lot of people would love to see it. I don't think there's going to be any movement until Iowa has a sense of what that would be from a framework of business plus on track standpoint, because that's always the red, not red herring, but always kind of the thing you're trying to overcome to
Mhm.
make the events work.
It'll be interesting to see. I just think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. I know the mile could get more than what they had in Texas this year, and we'll have to see. It's ready to go. All they basically have to do is replace the styrofoam and the safer barriers, and maybe address a couple of fence posts in the back on the back straightaway to strengthen that up. But as far as I know, I've been told that it's pretty much in good shape for racing. So hopefully we'll keep our fingers crossed. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Iowa. And I agree. I think in hindsight, with what happened in the last couple of races and with at Milwaukee, it hurt not having that infield um, general admission. Whereas we see at Road America, that's such a big thing. Road America maybe might have been a little bit down on attendance this year from walk up because of the sketchy weather and that they were having off and on all weekend. But they built such a base, basically you can almost call it like a season ticket with the camping, that
Hmm.
there is so much camping now, and they've embraced camping that it raises your base at Road America for all the big events there so much that it helps address that if the walk up crowd isn't as big. It's still a very very strong crowd this year. I would say it was easily bigger than what they had in Sonoma that for the Cup race this year.
Yeah, I didn't get to see any of Sonoma, but it looked strong all
Yeah.
weekend, and I barely got around the facilities. I really only got down to turn 5 and 13, 14. But even then, you could tell the campgrounds. You're right, were exactly good. The other thing that obviously Road America is now established is date equity. Whether it's
Hmm.
that middle to late June time frame, it's clear now. It's been 6 or 7 years, 7 years already since it's come back on the schedule, which is hard to believe, but awesome. Whereas Milwaukee had, I think, 3 or 4 different dates. It was that June date, it was an August date, it was a July date. It was just like, come on, guys. I mean, you're not helping it. And they did the same thing to Phoenix too, where it had, I think, 2 or 3 dates as well. So
All right, well, Tony, we certainly appreciate it. It's going to be 3 weeks. That kind of sucks for Mid Ohio. We're 20 days, I should say, but then when Mid Ohio comes up, but we have the Fourth of July weekend, and for those interested, we have the Harry Miller Vintage IndyCar meet at the Milwaukee Mile coming up the weekend after the 4th of July, and of course NASCAR back at Road America 4th of July weekend. So a lot of stuff coming up. There's a Dan Gurney reunion at Road America, then the third week in July. That's going to be huge. So a
yeah,
lot of stuff going on in the Midwest right now.
yeah, shout out to our mutual friend Jacques Sang on that.
Yeah, and
Legend of the restoration business for the All American Eagle.
for
Really.
those interested, Marshall Pruitt did a neat thing on their 81 Eagle, the Chip Mead White Castle car. Look for that at racer.com. And Tony, where were you plugging this weekend?
Yeah, I was on Trackset Online helping them out. It's kind of nice to get back to track. I don't, it's not my day job anymore, but it is nice to be called out of the bullpen given my experience level and love of the sport. So always
You and I did some stuff for Racing Nation, so it's 2008 all over again, isn't it?
pretty much.
So thanks for listening to the Traction Reaction Podcast. I'm Steve Zotke along with Tony DiZinno. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on the Traction Podcast.